It was down to the wire, but the Israel-Hamas ceasefire has been extended for another day, making way for continued aid to be ushered into Gaza, where some 2 million residents have struggled to access food, water, and medicine for weeks. The Biden administration itself has voiced concern that a continued Israeli offensive could result in thousands more civilian casualties and derail the release of the remaining hostages held in Gaza. My next guest shares that concern. Congressman Seth Moulton of Salem. Seth, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be back.
Thank you. And a note for our viewers, the congressman and I are old friends from college, and I donated to his first campaign, so you should know that. So, Congressman, what do you think are the prospects of the ceasefire continuing further?
Well, it sounds encouraging. Obviously, there are a lot of hostages that have yet to be returned, and we all want those hostages back. The ceasefire has been effective in accomplishing that goal. And by the way, it's all the more reason why, had Israel agreed to a unilateral ceasefire, as many people were calling for in the weeks preceding this deal, all the hostages would still be with Hamas. Hamas certainly wasn't going to return the hostages out of some, kindness, some kind terrorist heart or something like that. So the fact that Israel and Hamas were able to come to a deal is important. And my hope is that that deal can be extended.
So that deal was negotiated through intermediaries, presumably with us playing a large role. Are we continuing to work to extend it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Secretary Blinken has been in Israel. The Biden administration is clearly behind this deal and has been quietly helping it come together. There's a resolution making its way through Congress to essentially condemn Qatar, the deal maker here, the host for the negotiations. That's not ill-timed. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to make this come together, despite plenty of political pressure in different directions that has made it difficult.
So the United States provides considerable aid to Israel, historically and in the current moment. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has been pretty open that he feels that he can essentially control the U.S. political environment to an extent that he has a pretty free hand no matter that aid. What's your assessment of how he's interacting with the administration and how that political dynamic is likely to continue?
Well, I've been very public in saying that I think Prime Minister Netanyahu should step down. I think he's fundamentally responsible for the security situation in Israel. I mean, you had the security services, the head of the army, take responsibility for their failures on October 7th, and yet Prime Minister Netanyahu has yet to do so. Clearly, the domestic unrest that's fomented under his regime and his extremist policies contributed to the fact that Israel was not on as alert as it should be. And a lot of Israelis have called for Prime Minister Netanyahu to step down. Now, it's not our decision in the United States. He's an elected leader. But that's my position. I don't think he's helpful to the situation.
So, Congressman, I'm just going to push you on that a bit. He is an elected leader, and it may not be our position, but the United States has intervened in Israeli politics on more than one occasion to push a prime minister out. So if it is as severe a situation as you're describing, we've done it before.
Well, look, that's President Biden's decision as to exactly what kind of pressure he's going to apply. I don't know that we've done it before in the midst of a war ongoing like this. There's certainly a lot of Israelis who want to see Prime Minister Netanyahu go, but don't think he should be actively pushed out while the battle is underway.
And so on the American side of the political debate, Senator Sanders has been pushing to condition American aid. What's your stance on that?
Look, I think Israel should be held to the exact same standards as any country to which we deliver aid, no more, no less. And the reality is that we do have some conditions on all aid that's delivered around the world. But the conditions that Senator Sanders and others are calling for are not conditions that we apply to aid for, say, Egypt or Saudi Arabia. And I'm certainly not going to support conditions on aid to Israel that we don't have on aid to Saudi Arabia. Now, having said that, though, there are a lot of ways that we should exert pressure and leverage on the Israelis to conduct this war in a more effective manner. I've been very clear that I think they're killing way too many Palestinians. And that's not only a moral travesty, it's a military mistake. They will ultimately turn more Palestinians against them if they continue killing so many innocents.
So, Congressman, I'd say you're one of the few people in the American government who has experience with the kind of urban warfare that the Israelis are facing right now. Drawing on that experience, what would you say that they're not doing that they need to do?
Well, fundamentally, they're making a lot of the same mistakes that we made in the early days of Iraq and Afghanistan, where we felt like we could bring a military solution to this fundamentally political problem. Yes, Israel has a right, I would argue a responsibility to take out Hamas. You cannot have peace with Hamas in power. And by the way, Hamas isn't good for the Palestinians either. Hamas is using them as human shields in this conflict. So everyone benefits from Israel taking out Hamas. But how they do that really matters. And they have to be much more surgical in their approach. What we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan is that killing innocent civilians actually serves as a recruitment tool for the terrorists. In fact, General McChrystal in Afghanistan commissioned a study by his staff that determined that in their estimate, about 10 terrorists are effectively recruited for every innocent civilian that is killed. That's a big problem for Israel when they're killing literally thousands of innocent Palestinians in the course of these attacks. So they need to take much more of a counterinsurgency approach, be much more surgical in their military operations, be much more effective at evacuating civilians, encouraging them to go to areas that have much more robust humanitarian support, and ultimately having a believable political endgame, believable by both sides, that Israeli troops can fight for and that Palestinians can support. Because at the end of the day, I don't believe that Israel can have security unless Palestinians are free. And I don't think that Palestinians are going to have security unless they give up this commitment of Hamas to eradicate Israel.
Congressman Moulton, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.